Not, I'll entertain a motion. I move to accept the minutes. Then moved, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it, and the minutes are approved. Okay, well, we have to have some rules for this kind of a meeting. Let's try as best we can not to talk over one another, but that's always a challenge in a meeting like this, but we'll do as best we can, okay? I know, well, it's not on the agenda, so we won't do it. Okay. Our first item on the agenda is the discussion and recommendation on the Sand Creek proposal for an employee assistance program. Scott and I reviewed this document a couple of weeks ago, and from my point of view, it seems like something that's actually
Sorry, that was me. Go ahead, Karen.
okay, that would be helpful for our employees. There is a cost, but it does not appear to be prohibitive. So I'll entertain comments and reactions to the Sand Creek proposal. Aaron, let me do this. Let me call on you because maybe that'll work easier. Aaron, any comments?
No, I don't have any comments on this.
Okay, Mary?
No, I was just wondering how it came about.
It came about, it's been talked about for a couple years. It was actually a request from Dan Clark from the ambulance service who had pushed this, and he is familiar with this particular program because Bayfield County utilizes it, and he has, there have been employees under Dan's supervision that have utilized it, and so he has indicated that it has worked well.
Any other comments? Mary, Hope, do you have any comments on it?
No, I'm good. I was very surprised at the price, though. That's pennies.
In terms of too much or too little?
Oh my gosh, too little.
Yeah, well, I was pleasantly surprised, but I think it's worth, I would think that it looks like a proposal that would be helpful for our employees and certainly all employees, but primarily our first responders who find themselves dealing with life and death situations, and that's not easy.
Right.
Any other comments on it?
Yes, Karen, I had a question here. I'm all for this. I think it's a great idea, except I have questions about the very last part on the bottom of page 14, additional services and rates. That's where it gets a little bit expensive. And I didn't know
Right.
what Scott or whoever is working on this, how this might work in our city. Who pays?
If we would find ourselves in need for such a service, I think that's something that we would have to review and determine if we'd want to go that route, or if there would be other avenues that could be used for that type of support.
And also looked at on a case-by-case basis, obviously.
And that'll be laid out to the people who avail themselves of this at the beginning, I would assume, so they know how it works.
Correct.
You guys are breaking up.
Do we want to take action on this and Scott's suggesting a recommendation? So
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation from,
That we forwarded to council?
right,
We forwarded to council?
of Sand
Okay.
Creek, yes.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Aaron. Any other discussion? No other discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. We will recommend this Sand Creek proposal for employee assistance program to the next meeting of the city council. Okay, the next item on the agenda is discussion and recommendation to establish an employee leave donation program. Scott, do you want to comment on this for us?
Well, I'll just make a brief comment and I'll hand it over to Tony for any additional questions,
Oh, right.
as he's the one who had put this together. But basically what we're seeking to do here is to formalize a practice that has occurred in the city some time ago. It has not happened recently, but with recent events, there has been some talk of whether or not this could potentially happen. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a formalized policy in place, and Tony has researched more of the details related to this.
Okay. Tony, I had a question. In the second paragraph, you talk about the IRS allowance for two exceptions in which leave can be donated without negative tax consequence. Those exceptions are, can you explain that a little bit to me?
Sure, and this is something that actually no one really realized, and probably at the time when this was first done with the city. Technically, if a employee donates time to another employee, they are taxed on that donation dollar amount wise, like they would be if they were to use it themselves. And then the employee receiving it would also be taxed on that time as well. The two exceptions that the IRS allows for are number one, we have a written policy, so we have it in place, which is what this establishes. And if that receiving employee qualifies for emergency medical leave, which is already identified the qualifications for that within a personal manual. The other reason that the IRS will waive those taxes for the donated employee is if there is a national state of emergency that is called. And I believe that came about more or less along the coastlines of the United States, where we get hurricanes and severe weather or severe tornadoes. So there are emergency events where an employee may not be able to go to work, not that they're physically ill or caring for someone who's physically ill. They just can't work because of their situation. So that is another, point where the IRS will let employees donate time to another employee without being taxed on that. And as I've been reading through this, the current state of emergency with the coronavirus, with COVID-19, does qualify as a national emergency as well. So that would work as well in this case.
Okay. Okay. Any questions of either Tony or Scott? Okay. What is your desire in terms of action on this? This recommendation?
Like the same with the last one, to approve it, to recommend it to go to council next month.
Okay.
I would make that motion to recommend it to council as,
Thank you.
moving forward.
Okay, excellent. Okay, it's been moved that we recommend this proposal on leave. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. that we make this recommendation to city council. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Thank you so much. The motion passes. The next item, proposal for emergency loans for active businesses. Scott or Mayor, who wants to talk about this?
I guess I would. This is an idea I thought of many weeks ago, and I was looking through when this crisis occurred, how our businesses might survive and what we might be able to do for them. I looked into what the state was then offering, or the feds, and I didn't see a lot that would be applicable to our city. And there's a lot of recent stuff that's gone on in the feds and state, and I'm still not sure that that would apply to very many, or if any, of our businesses. So then I started thinking about, did we have any money to do anything with, so we could do something? And then I remember what used to be our revolving loan fund. And we still have ideas for use of that, but right now I'm concerned that there's a good possibility, especially now that this crisis may extend a lot longer than we thought it might have in the first weeks, that there may be businesses that really could struggle. And even this amount, we're talking maybe the difference between them surviving or not surviving. There's lots of questions here. I want to thank Scott, our city administrator, and Max putting into a form that seemingly would work. I just came up with the idea and the concept. And I still have some questions on who, what, and when that I'm looking for all of you to chime in and give us great ideas.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll open it for discussion. Someone who wants to jump in on this? What are your reactions?
I love the idea.
Mary?
Yeah, I love the
Okay.
idea. And, you know, it may not be a fortune, but I think in these days, any little bit's gonna be able to help. I guess with the tourist rooming and all of that, I see that more Main Street businesses that are, and that the home business is not, so that makes sense to me, the eligibility.
Aaron, comment?
Yeah, I think, agree with Mary, I think it's a great idea. I wouldn't, and like, this is just because I don't know this well enough, but like, this is affordable to us. This isn't anything that's gonna tax the city too heavily, Scott or Mayor?
We currently have close to $180,000 in our, what used to be the revolving loan fund. So we're looking at potentially using, well, any amount this committee and the city council decides. We're sort of proposing using $75,000 of that. Now, the problem is that, as I see it, if it's open to the entire city, any business in the city, I started looking around and figuring out what are businesses in the city. And there are a lot more than we might think. And then how do you define those businesses? Some are more tenuous or sporadic than others.
Right.
And then it comes up with the idea of, I've been thinking a lot and considering what could be done. Might certain businesses be more important to the city than others? So are there sort of iconic, important businesses in Washburn that could collapse during this, and other businesses which are much more part-time, but are still businesses that are not so pivotal to the city? I'm not saying pro or con, I'm just raising some questions. And then there's another idea that came to me. Would a business that's a one-person operation be weighted the same as a business that has a lot of employees? We have some restaurants that are either shut down or at minimal standards now, minimal operation, or I'm sure really hurting, as opposed to a one-person operation. And I also wanted to add at the beginning, as you know, I operate a business here in the city of Washburn, and I would exempt myself from any of this provisions as long as I am mayor, which may only be another week. So,
Yeah, it's hard to define iconic and the essential, to the city. That's, somewhat subjective. But I understand what you are saying. I actually, because I had nothing else to do, drove down Main Street and wrote down every business. And I counted 45. Now, some of them obviously are operating, such as the pharmacy and the hardware store, the grocery store, so they're included in that 45. But there are obviously a number that aren't. And while, I looked at the $2,000 amount and thought, is that really, what is the fix? I guess in my head, I was hoping for something in the neighborhood of 5,000. But, I suppose any amount is helpful.
so if I could jump in,
What,
I'm sorry, would someone speak before me? Well, if we did $5,000 and stuck to the 75,000, that's only 15 businesses. And
I
and like you, Karen, I drove up and down the street and counted all the businesses and wrote them down. But if you open it up to all the businesses in Washburn, there are far more than that. And they're existing businesses. For example, in what is the nursing home building, the assisted living building, there are several businesses there now, which we made allowable. The karate studio is one, that's a business. We also have the businesses along the lake shore. We have the event center, the motel, I suppose Washburn Marina Inc., our marina, that's a business. And I might take exception with the hardware stores being open. Yes, they're open, but greatly reduced number of customers. So
right.
something could be made there. I'm just throwing these questions out to you.
I only counted the ones on Bayfield Street.
At first I did too, but then upon discussion, we thought, should it be open to all businesses? Why would you exclude some businesses and not others?
Well, I see the exclusion from a home business to a brick and mortar, and I guess I'm more seeing the brick and mortar need for money than any home business,
Right,
so.
but excluding home businesses, we have lots of businesses there.
Mhm.
So if
Right.
we have probably close to 60 businesses, I would guess. If you have $75,000 and all of them want it, that's not much.
True. Any other comments?
Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention is that I specifically, in my idea, wanted to make this as apolitical as possible. So that's why I suggested that only it be administrative, with our city administrator and city treasurer be the arbiters of this, so no elected official would be involved.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, and it's a quicker process too, which is good.
Karen, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I think you should probably have up the Main Street businesses, because the longevity from what I saw this morning on the track, what they figure this COVID-19 is going to carry out, we're going to lose businesses on Main Street. That would be my only, and there's some businesses that are struggling that were open, while they were open. It's going to get a whole lot worse here. That's all I have to say on that.
I was curious, like, in the application process, is the application, does it have a plan for repayment as well, or do we have something in place? I was just trying to read into this a little bit, maybe there's more detail that, in the application is that,
Yes,
I know we have a 5-year,
5-year no interest.
5-year payback or on the tax bill, or on the, if you sell, it, right?
okay.
Another
So
thing.
either way,
It should come back, yeah.
Well, perhaps.
Could.
I think we must look at this realistically and think that there could well be businesses that don't survive, and the chances of repayment are very, very slight.
sure.
Well, it does send a message to businesses that says, you know, we know, we don't know, but we can assume the struggle that you're having, and we're doing something. It's not going to solve it, but we're doing something. Another comment?
If I can just chime in here, I think that the committee should just really think about a couple of the key points. Are you comfortable with the application review process? Are you comfortable with the bank that is being proposed? And I know there was some discussion on the amount, $2,000, $3,000. I mean, you would have the ability, if you wanted to, say if it was a business that had 10 or more employees, they could apply for 5, but if it was less than 10, it would only be 2. So there is some things there. If you wanted to have a geographic limitation on it, it is possible. So those are all the options, I suppose, that are before you for consideration.
Comments on what Scott just said?
Is there, it looks like you can resubmit the application. Is that essentially almost like an appeal process if they're not approved the first time? Would that go to a different body, or would it go right back to the same?
I would say, I do have to clarify that with Max. The way I read that is if there's missing information or if we have questions as to their application, we can request more information. But if we would flat out deny it for whatever reason, if it was felt that that reason was not justifiable, we believe that the appeal process would be to council.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me.
And Scott, it's going to be item F under 5, which talks about required to sign a note and a mortgage as a condition. Just explain that to me again.
Okay. So what we did here is we basically took our existing facade loan requirements and modified them for this situation. And so how that program works is whenever somebody has a facade loan, it is actually technically a mortgage. That again, it's like a 0% interest mortgage, in that case for, I believe, 7 years. And so this would work the same way. We would file a mortgage against the property, and that would be one mechanism. Basically, it puts a lien on the property if it's ever sold or transferred, that we could be repaid through that mechanism.
Okay, all right.
If the business is not,
The intent of this concept would be to present it at the upcoming council meeting.
That is correct. Carl had a question as well.
Oh, yes, Carl.
If the business does not own the property, how would that
I
work?
can't hear him.
You said if the business does not own the property, how would that work? Many do rent.
I don't know.
One thing just to think about further, it was mentioned to do only Bayfield Street businesses. That opens up another question. So who exactly is a Bayfield Street business? Not to pick people out, but have gone up and down the street many times. For example, is Emma's Hair Salon a Main Street business? They're just off the corner. Is Gritty Fish CrossFit a Main Street business? They're just off the corner. And both those people I've spoken to, they believe they are real businesses.
I don't think we should limit it to a certain street. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I think all, like, the gym is a perfect example of, obviously we cannot operate right now. And would maybe need this loan as well as anyone else, so.
Here's more things to perhaps give you thought. So what about gas stations? What about banks? What about doctors? What about several other things? What about nonprofit organizations?
Yeah, right.
But as is written, those are not accepted.
This is just a proposal. This is just a proposal here. This is not an ordinance.
I don't know if our city administrator and treasurer want this role. When you start trying to include what are the exceptions, is the dentist, the funeral home, as you say, banks and or gas stations, do we automatically exclude them? And once you get into the exclusion business, then that makes it, we have to have a lot more than currently is in there.
Yeah, those would not be restricted for me. Gas stations would be fine. The probability of a bank going after a couple grand seems a bit silly, but I can see gas stations. I can, and going back, I see Emma, I see Gritty Fish. So yeah, to be Bayfield Street restricted, I'd rather not. But.
Okay. Well, and as it's currently written, it does not restrict.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if they feel like they need the money, then they should have the opportunity to apply for it. And because there will be some kind of a requirement to pay back, except we have to figure out the rental part, I don't see why we wouldn't accept the applications.
Right. I did have a question, and this is just, maybe it's just too complicated, but what happens, like Tom was kind of mentioning, that this could be worse than we imagined, and I love that we're doing something, but I also kind of wonder, would we have something in here where you could apply twice? Like if maybe the two grand gets you through a couple of months of this, but if we have 2 months more, they could reapply for an additional 2,000. And I don't know if that's something that we actually need to deal with right now, or if it needs to be provisioned in here right now. But I was curious what everyone else thought about that, because I can see some businesses needing more than others, and if if we had the ability to help them, survive this, that could go a long way.
Yeah, and we're talking about the unknown. I think the point is a good one, Eric. The difficulty, of course, is being able to look too far into the future and make those kinds of predictions. Obviously, if we approve something like this, we could come back at a later date and say, hey, we need to do it again.
Okay.
Or do more.
Sure.
We do have $170,000 in that fund, and I know that that is precious money, and not a fund that we want to see totally depleted, but on the other hand, we do not want to see our businesses fail when we could maybe figure out a way to help them. And, I think at this point, my opinion is that we address the immediate need, and this is one way to do it. Although, again, as I said earlier, I wonder about the dollar amount, but, not knowing how many might apply, it's hard to know if 75 that $2,000 is sufficient pot of money, or not. We don't, again, we can't look into the future. The difficulty that I think we all have is that this is a day-by-day existence right now, and looking to the future is really very difficult.
Sure.
Karen, if I could just bring it back to a point you brought up and a point that Scott brought up in the varying amounts of money. So, for example, just to pick out a business that is currently closed and might struggle quite a bit, and that's Coco's. There's quite a lot of employees and is sort of a mainstay of our main street. A varying amount due to employees and things like that, or whatever criteria may be appropriate. I'm just putting this out to the committee. The same with the timeout, which is entirely closed.
And are you saying then that we would include that as a specific, or that would be part of the review process, and that Scott and Ken would have some discretion?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just throwing out possibilities here. You could, Scott positioned it as number of employees as one criteria. That might work.
I think you need real criteria. I can't
Right.
see the discretion of anyone. That would become too much.
Right.
Too much, too personal, yeah.
I agree with Mary entirely. That's why I want some good criteria. So,
Right.
Carl, do you have any great ideas here?
No, I think the concept is good. I don't think we can predict enough in the future to go too far with it. I think if you offer this program as a start, and then like everything else that's gonna happen in the next 12 months, we have to come back and revisit it when we see what's gonna happen. I mean, we simply can't know. I think it should be offered to all the businesses. I think we have to use some discretion about what businesses, I mean, if you use an example like Coco's, I mean, it's clearly, yes, you need to do it. Timeout, clearly, yes, we need to help them. The barber shops are closed. Those businesses, I think we need to take a look at it and see the viability, the importance to the community and the viability, because we don't have enough money to cover everybody, that's for sure. And even if we did $180,000, you wouldn't have enough to cover everything. But I think that it's basically it's seed money, and I think if we keep it in perspective of being seed money, then we should go ahead with it.
So that kind of reminds me, so I had a phone call from one of the businesses in town having great issues with the food truck across the street who is not local, who does not pay local taxes. And is there a way that if you're paying local taxes, your business is eligible for this loan? I mean, can you fine tune it that way? Because that would certainly make them ineligible. And,
Sure, I would say that is certainly a criteria, and it's a criteria that we've had in mind, being with the brick and mortar, so that, one, there's either property tax being paid or personal property tax that is being paid and up to date on that as a criteria, because I've had some of the calls on the food truck as well, and I understand the concern. That's a little different issue in that it's a matter of what is the legal thing to do and what is the correct thing to do. The legal thing for us to do is, they have applied for a permit per our ordinance, and we don't have justification, even under an emergency, to just pull a permit just because. I mean, that would be a constitutional issue that we would be facing there. So, it's up to people to decide which businesses they wish to support. So.
Right. Well, based on our conversation today and the comments, some very good ones, it appears to me that we want to move this forward before the council review its decision at our next council meeting. Correct?
that would be a yes?
Okay. And is there anything specific, we talked about a lot of specifics, but any additional language that we're recommending? Do we want to have a statement about property taxes and or personal taxes to define it as a business that's operating in the city, or do we allow, again, the administrator and treasurer, as they review the application, to say, hey, this is a food truck and that doesn't qualify?
I mean, are property taxes about the finest we can do in terms of fine tuning who's eligible? I mean, they'd be taxes paid to the city certainly, in one respect or another, right?
Or you can limit it by defining it as a permanent structure in an ongoing business.
Right, and that was our intention, to make sure that it is a permanent structure within the city. And I thought, I have to read through this again, but I thought we had that defined, but.
Well, you said that less of a physical presence in owning real property, and you could require additional information regarding the existence of a physical presence. So the language is there that would focus on businesses that have a presence in Washington. Well, I think I entertain a motion to, regarding this item in terms of moving it on to the council at our next meeting.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded that we forward this concept paper to the council with, I believe you can say positive view of this idea. So all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. The proposal is approved. We have one more item 2021.
Excuse
Wow,
Yeah,
me,
we have one more.
excuse me,
Just said a few minutes ago, we could look to the future. He's wanting to look to the future and do it for 2 years segments. So Scott, talk to us about this.
excuse me, Madam Chair, you missed the item on discussion and recommendation to create and classify severance liability as a designated
right.
fund.
Sorry, I did.
And if I could add, Karen, you're fading away a little bit.
I'm sorry. Is this better?
A little bit.
Well, how about it?
On that agenda item, I would make a motion to forward that with a recommendation to create and classify severance liability as a designated fund onto council.
And is there a second? Then moved and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, ayes have it, so moved. Okay, I apologize for that. Last item is, moving to a 2-year budget. Scott?
Okay. You know, and I realize, you know, this is something you might want to think about a little bit, but the legislature just recently passed a law that allows this to happen. And given, you know, once we get past this crisis, before, you know, just a few weeks ago, we were doing preparations for the Bayfield Street project. That was our focus. And in looking towards that, and just looking at how much time the budgetary process takes us each year, and having a desire to have the departments really think ahead and to really do a little better job in planning for, particularly for capital items and where we're heading. I thought this might be a good requirement or a good exercise to move in this direction. And, you know, it's something to think about, and it wouldn't have to be decided today. It could be if you're comfortable with it, and that gives us plenty of time to make preparations, because we wouldn't be doing this until about a year from now, assuming that we would have all the ordinances and so forth updated. But I'm just throwing it out there. It could give us a little bit of time to do other planning in the years where we have the project occurring in 2024. In 2026, we would not have to worry about a lot of budgeting while that project is still going on. So that was one of the reasons I was thinking this could be a good option.
Questions of Scott?
I have a question, Scott. Do you feel like this would end up moving more restricted? I'm just thinking, like, even our annual budget, if something comes up with a water main break, then we have to reconvene and kind of look at a budget. Do you feel like this would, that would happen even more often because we plan for 2 years rather than one?
Well, in answer to that question, I certainly hope we don't have a lot of issues like that come up. Those are again, the unexpected events, and when those unexpected events happen, yes, we do have to adjust. I would certainly not be in favor of making adjustments on the whim or just because. I think that we really do need to stick to the plan, stick to the budget, unless it is a true true emergency or something that has come up that was unforeseen that we need to address, and it's just an issue of self-discipline.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, as long as we feel like we actually have that discipline, in place. I think, again, I haven't been with council long enough to say that this is a real rare instance that we had to adjust, but I was just thinking, if that isn't so rare, it might be, more cumbersome than having it, 1 year.
I mean, it sounds good, but we always find ourselves reacting to things, so I get what you're saying, Aaron, yeah.
Karen, some idea that, concern I had is that, as you know, we have yearly elections for city council and mayor every 2 years, and so roughly half the city council in 1 year, and then the majority of city council the next year, and the mayor, and there's odd years. So if we passed a 2-year budget, and a bunch of people didn't like what we did, council did, and city council was essentially tossed out the next election, the majority of city council for example, possibly the mayor, then they may want to change lots of things. That's my concern about this. Not to say, I think this is a good idea to try it for a while and see if it works. But I just have a little concern about elected people may have real different ideas if they get elected to office.
So you're either a lame duck or you're changing everything, yeah.
Should we, since this is not time sensitive, we want to consider thinking about it for a while and bring it back at a later date? What's the timeline, Scott, in terms of when would, if we went to this, what would we need, when would we need to put this into effect? What's the timeline?
If we wanted to go to this, I would say that by this fall, we should be moving in that process so we can get ordinances passed, and I want to make sure that we give department heads plenty of time next year to start making those preparations.
So we have sufficient, a number of months at least at this point.
Yes.
I have one more comment or question, I guess it is. Since some of the things you've talked about already is how late in the game you get highway monies or what's coming in from the county. If we're trying to stretch that, if we're already late getting that information in a yearly budget, how does that help if we're pushing it out for 2 years? When those, insurance is the other one too, that one. So if you don't have that information in timely fashion regularly, how does that affect a 2 year?
That's a good question, and my response to that is we're taking the best guess that we have at that time. And if our guesses are going to be significantly off as that information comes in, we may need to look at doing some adjustments, a budget amendment or something midstream. We would still need to annually approve the levy of the city. That's something that does not change, but the overall basic budget discussion would only be once every 2 years.
But it's so much fun.
What's in that can?
So are you comfortable with delaying any action on this and spending some more time thinking about it?
Yeah, that sounds good to me, Karen.
Okay. Aaron? Yes, this is, okay, great, thank you. I believe that, completes our agenda. If we were on, it would have been turned off 10 minutes ago, but, we're under an hour, please. Thank you so much, and, Carl, for joining us. I think you did it, and, that was the agenda, so I guess that's all we can do. Hopefully all of you are well, and the families and loved ones are also well. And, we are persevering and will. Thank you. I will entertain, take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Second. Okay, moved and seconded. The meeting is adjourned at 3:24.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.